right, guys. So what you just witnessed there was the latest act of terrorism from the climate extremists that have been vandalizing cities across the West, okay? Because they won't go to places where they actually really need to go, like China, and be agents of chaos there because they know what will happen, right? Only in the West can you get away with vandalizing property, being agents of chaos, causing destruction, and just being all around nuisances to society because you say that you're protesting to save the world, right? Again, that would not fly in China, which is why you don't ever see them in China. But you do see them in the United States and in Europe. And in this story right here, we're going to go out to Europe, Rome, okay, as climate protesters turn the Trevi fountain water black, okay? So basically, in protest of fossil fuels, these people decided to dilute the water with charcoal to turn fountain water black. As if that's going to get anybody on their side. Absolutely amazing stuff. Now, these protesters, right, these terrorists, they were taken away by police. Now, I'm not sure if they were thrown in jail or what, or given a slap on the wrist. Who knows? But in a statement, they're trying to justify this by basically saying that, well, there are deadly floods going on in northern Italy, okay, in a northern Italian region. And allegedly, it's because of climate change. So therefore, we need to dirty up your water in this fountain, right? Because there are floods happening. Again, it's amazing. I guess you could argue that these are domestic and international terrorists. Rome's mayor, Roberto Gualtieri, condemned the protests, the latest in a series of attacks targeting works of art in Italy. Quote, enough of these absurd attacks on our artistic heritage, he wrote on Twitter. The tradition is for visitors to toss coins into the famous 18th century fountain to ensure that they will return to Rome one day. Yeah, so again, this is, I guess, a historic fountain. It's a tourist attraction, and these people decided to ruin it for their own selfish reasons. Absolutely amazing stuff. They should be thrown in jail, and, you know, we should also throw away the key as well, too. Right? I'm so serious. Because this has to stop. These are not peaceful protests. Okay? These are acts of violence. These are acts of domestic terrorism. Okay? You have these people going into stores and pouring milk out. Okay? Which basically is vandalizing and also theft because they're stealing the store's product. And people want to continue to justify this and try to say, oh, they're being peaceful, blah, blah, blah. Locking them up is taking away their rights. No, they're not being peaceful anymore. They're blocking traffic. And people are tired of being peaceful with these people, right? They're tired of that. Just ask the Just Stop Oil protesters who, effed around and found out when they tried to block a street in the middle of London. And one of the drivers, the motorists, were not having it. Take a look. Yeah, so you've seen that, okay? People are fed up, right? People are just not having it. You are obstructing highways, basically not allowing people to get to work, to get wherever they're going, to do what they're doing, to go about their day because you want to protest in the street because you're trying to save the world, okay? Or you believe that you're trying to save the world because a lot of these people are in over their heads. They don't know what they're talking about. And then when confronted with a real debate with somebody who actually does know what they're talking about, they always fall apart. Just like this so-called activist right here, who's a Just Stop Oil activist. He got into this debate with Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was the Secretary of State for Business, industrial and energy in the UK. Okay, and this guy right here, he really does show how unequipped, right, a lot of these protesters are when it comes to having real conversations about something that they're so passionate about. So without further ado, let's get into it, because this is a fascinating debate.
What would happen if we did just stop oil?
Hi Jacob, thanks for having me on. Yeah, so my name is Sean, I'm 26, I'm from the Just Stop Oil Coalition. We are demanding that the UK government end all new fossil fuel licences in the UK. So, as you know yourself, you've heard our demand before, we are asking for an immediate halt to all oil and gas. We need a just transition. But I did think it was quite appropriate that you're a supporter of flag war, such a cruel and horrible sport, horrible food style.
Yeah, so you heard that. You heard the demand. We're demanding an immediate stop, an immediate stop to all oil and gas production, okay? I mean, this is as extreme as it gets. And then he wants to say, well, we want a transition. That's not a transition, right? You can't immediately stop using fossil fuels. That's not a transition.
But if we just stopped oil now, the lights would go out.
Well,
yeah,
we wouldn't have to see you then, would we? But we're not asking for that. We are asking for an end to new oil and gas licences.
But then we import it from abroad, and the emissions are greater. We went through this with fracking. If we used our own shale gas, we would reduce the emissions by between 2 and 60.
So the UK currently has more than enough oil and gas domestically to last us the next 8 years. What you're talking about, you should be saying to nationalise the energy system then, because the only reason we import it, most of the UK oil and gas is exported. We use it elsewhere. If we use our own oil and gas, that's not happening now.
No, we're not self-sufficient in oil and gas. We don't begin to be self-sufficient. We have between half and a third, depending on the weather, of our own gas supplies. What we need to look at is we are looking at what the climate crisis is a red light for humanity. This is what the world scientists are saying, that we need to take action. I'm glad you highlighted that Extinction Rebellion will be out this weekend. From the 24th... Why don't you stand for election?
So many of us have stood for election.
And do you win?
Yes, actually, some of us have gotten into power, actually, believe it or not. Because
nobody in Parliament?
A lot of politicians do recognise that dying for an oil-balanced profits is not in the interest of their constituents.
It's not that, it's making sure the lights stay on and people have heat and warmth. And because of the reduction of
with renewables, a variety of renewables is much more... The thing is, lights will go out when the climate collapses. There will be no lights on when the country cannot run.
We've had a massive growth in renewables, but if you take renewables over the winter, when the wind isn't blowing, the sun isn't shining, how are people to heat and light their homes?
And this right here is exactly where this conversation kind of falls apart for this guy, right? Because when it comes to the conversation about energy, okay, and energy sources, it must be reliable basically at all times, right? That is what separates a first world country from a second or a third world country, right? Is reliability of energy, okay? Can you rely on the lights being on at all times, okay? Of you having electricity at all times, right? In the UK, specifically, biomass and wind are their two largest sources of renewable energy. And renewables count for about 41% of their electricity produced, about 6% of the total energy used in the UK. So it's still a long way away from saying that, hey, we can stop, or they, right? I mean, I guess by extension, we, the West, United States too. I mean, the climate extremists make the same arguments here. That's a long way away from being able to just stop using fossil fuels and say, hey, we're going to rely on renewable energy 100%. Doesn't mean that it's not going to get there one day. It definitely will, right? But just not today. But these people don't want to wait till 15, 20, 30 years in the future. They want it today, which makes them extremists, right? And you're going to see that coming up here in this conversation.
Jacob, you're a well-educated man, you've been to university, you know that solar has come a lot further than that. The solar actually can work even on a cloudy day these days.
It can't work at night though, can it?
No, but it can work. But so you can have a variety. You can have tidal, you can have wind, you can have all sorts of...
Tidal gives you power twice a day.
Tidal can work through a river, not just tidal power. You can have river power. You can have all sorts. You have a variety of energy. Jacob,
you can.
You need to be clear about this,
not
right?
A secure supply.
What political aims do you want to have? Because whatever it is, we should be on the same side. Without green energy, without renewables, there is no future in the UK.
What are we getting?
Without renewables, there's no future in the UK. Again, this guy is talking like the world is going to end without renewable energy. That's just not true. Worst case scenario, again, if you believe the science on climate change, right? The establishment narrative on climate change, I guess that's probably a better way to put it. Worst case scenario is that we're going to adapt, right? We're going to adapt. We're not going to mitigate, but we're going to adapt. I think adaptation is the middle ground. I think that is the moderate route, is to say, hey, you know what? We should adapt. Okay, we should adapt. And we can weather the storm or whatever may happen with climate change. The extremist route is to say, no. We have to try to stop climate change. We have to mitigate it, right, to the point where it's not happening or even reverse it. And we have to do that today, right? That is the extremist end of the spectrum here.
To make up for the supply when it's a cold day and there's a surge in demand and there's no wind.
You can use tidal. You can use
only twice a day.
You can use river power. You can use all sorts of different renewables.
There isn't enough river power.
The point is, at the moment, the UK is not reducing at the level that it needs to. We are not insulating British homes. We are not investing in green jobs, and we are not investing in public transportation.
On insulation, you discover that after 3 years, people use more heating. That they take the saving in years 1 and 2, and in year 3, there's been a study showing that people have just put their heating up.
In what world? I'd like to see. I'd like to see that study. I'd like to see that study.
This was a study reported
Jacob, will you be joining us on the 24th of April at 1 p.m. for a march to end new oil and gas from Parliament Square?
No, of course I won't, because I want my constituents to have warm homes.
Climate crisis.
I want them to have warm homes and have economic prosperity.
We are already seeing crops burning in the field, Jacob. There are crops burning in the field in the UK. The only benefit to the climate crisis that we're seeing right now is that we can grow grapes and wine in the UK now, but we will have millions and billions of refugees, thousands of people fleeing to this country, and you're against immigration. You have a strong stance against immigration. How is that going to happen?
I'm against lunatic extremism.
The climate crisis
there is not this level of crisis at all.
According to the science there is. Your own scientists, Jacob, your own scientists are saying it.
You notice how this dude, he's just not letting him talk, right? He's not letting him dispute his points, because every point that this dude brings up, he has a response for, backed up by facts and evidence. This guy is all emotion, right? All emotion, all facts and evidence. The facts and evidence, unfortunately, can't speak because this guy is too busy going on his emotional rant. Again, this is all climate activists. They never let the person that they're debating actually refute any of their points, because their points fall apart so quickly. So they got to keep talking over them and keep moving on to the next thing, right? Again, it's just, this is embarrassing.
We've actually got an area of greenness equivalent to twice the size of Australia where we can grow crops, helping the food supply. We've seen, because of warmer temperatures,
Jacob, how many Welsh farmers have gone out of business in the last 20 years?
Welsh farmers have not been going out of business because of climate change. What has been the threat to Welsh farmers is whether or not producing lamb in
so their
Wales
turnips haven't been dying, their food hasn't been cut, they haven't had crop failure. There was no crop failures last year, Jacob, was there not? There was no crop failures.
Last year we saw crops coming through
we lost
better.
1/3 of our wheat,
we lost Ukraine, and then we saw more wheat being grown in other parts of the world. I mean, these things are being made up. Even the IPCC is accepting that we've got more crops being grown. We've got on average 2% crop growth, agricultural productivity growth, every year for the last 200 years. That hasn't changed.
Is that on average?
That's on average.
That's a bit of a problem. In the last 30 to 40 years, we've had a massive... Of course we have. In the last 200 years, we had massive investments, massive change in the scientific way in which we develop crops. In the last 20 to 30 years, we have seen a decimation of the natural cycles.
We have not seen a decimation of crops in the last 20 years. We've actually seen more crops being grown.
In the last
we've been increasing
last year
productivity.
In the UK, we increased productivity when most of our crops failed.
Globally.
When there was 40-degree heat, houses were on fire, the fire brigade was in the worst it had ever been since
globally,
World War II.
We are growing more crops than ever before. And genetically modified crops are improving our productivity even further.
And that's my whole point. That's why I say that worst case scenario, that's adaptation, right? Science is ultimately going to allow humans to adapt to whatever worst case scenario happens with climate change. Okay, if you believe the narrative, right? That's what he's talking about. So even if, let's say, we lose some natural production capabilities, artificially we can make up for it. Now, I know some people may not necessarily like that, but I mean, basically, a vast majority of our crops, okay, the things we eat are already kind of genetically modified, right? I'm just saying, it is what it is, but it's allowed us to adapt, right, as humans, and to continue to grow.
Yes, but it only gets us so far,
crisis
Jacob.
Isn't there. It's invented.
By whom? Who's
by
benefiting?
You.
By me personally, yes,
you
Jacob.
are part of a system that wishes to frighten people into having a lower standard of living. I don't know why you want to do this.
We do not want people to have a lower standard of living. People will have no standard of living and a climate crisis. Look what happened to Syria when it collapsed. Look what happened to other countries when they collapsed.
Syria?
When the UK
Syria did not collapse because of climate change. It collapsed because of a dictator.
The climate crisis. I said it collapsed. And what happens when countries collapse? Your standard of living goes down.
Oh
yes.
The UK is already at threat. The UK is at threat. That is what the scientists are saying.
There's no threat to the UK.
According to the world scientists, and as one of your lovely commenters just said, I would not trust a politician.
All right, but which world scientist has said that the UK...
IPCC
this is not
has
what the
said
IPCC
we are on
has
cold
said.
red for humanity. We are looking at having up to 1 billion climate refugees by the end of the century.
The IPCC has actually noted that climate change has led to fewer deaths from weather events than before because more people die from cold than from heat.
We have better equipment to defend ourselves than previous generations. Well, we have better homes, but that's still not good enough.
That's the whole point. Humanity's always been adaptable.
Yes, but
ding, 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 ding. I mean, this is an easy argument to make, man. Worst case scenario, humanity will adapt, right? That's just what it is.
You cannot adapt to a flood. If you are drowned in water, you will not grow.
The Dutch have adapted to water levels for hundreds of years. You can adapt to water levels.
But not forever, Jacob. It's not inevitable. You have
we
to...
have always adapted. Agricultural productivity is increased.
On the 24th of April, you should join us at 1 p.m. because we will not have a future.
Because I actually don't want to join in this alarmism. I want my constituents not to be made cold and poor. I want their standard of living to rise.
I understand why you don't want an alarmism, because your way of life depends on there being no alarm. If the people learn what's happening, they will rise up.
Cheap energy.
And that is why you do not want an alarm.
Cheap energy
because you depend on it.
Biggest improver of people's standards of living
Great,
over
let's
centuries.
go with renewables. It's 9 times cheaper. 9 times cheaper renewable energy.
This is an invented figure, but thank you very much.
Again, arguing with those people is like arguing with a brick wall, bruh. That was painful. That was extremely painful. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.